What's up, everybody, and welcome to the official StarMade stream. Today we're going to be doing a power preview for our new power system. Hopefully you guys are all having a fantastic day. If you are tuning in on Twitch, welcome to the official stream. Hopefully you've been here before. If not, welcome for your first time. And we'll be doing some fun stuff today. If you are tuning in on YouTube, you will be seeing highlights from the stream, what we'll have from that. So that'll be cut from our official channel, twitch.tv/StarMade. But I have here with me my fantastic co-host, Chris.
Hello.
And a wonderful, wonderful guest who I think you will all really enjoy hearing from, and that is the wonderful Schema.
Hello.
So I think without any further ado, we can go ahead and jump into it. I will go ahead and just start up and show you guys just how easy this is. So we have our reactor block here, which is pretty easy to work with. It doesn't require any special configuration. There's no certain shape that works best. It's just plop down some reactors, and then they have a relationship with these stabilizers here. So I have 3 of these down. Let's say that I want to add some more, just to show you guys how this works, so that you can actually see what it tells you, I guess. And also let me get some symmetry on here, because that'll be helpful. So we got our symmetry, and then what happens if I try and place a stabilizer? Well, if it's this close, if you have this many blocks, then it's not going to work right. It has lower efficiency, but it shows you with this line here exactly how far you need to put it, so that it actually is going to be at maximum efficiency. So it's super, super handy. So before I get too much farther into it, I guess we should probably cover a little bit of why we decided to do this.
Well, the main purpose of this system is basically you have your reactors and you have your stabilizers. The main downside of the old system is that it's just too many blocks. It's just filling up your ship with most functional block as possible. If you want like a pretty ship, you can't pretty much do that if you want an efficient ship. Also, like changing your ship, refurbishing your ship is a long process because you have to rip out everything and then you have to redo anything. With this new system, power reactors will be relatively small compared to the whole size of your ship. And the way we kind of introduce that mechanic is with the stabilizers. So the more reactor blocks you have, the more basic reactor blocks you have, the blue ones, the further away these stabilizers have to be from them. That means that if you want to build like a decently sized ship like that one over there, you need to build your stabilizers pretty much on the other side of the ship. You can build them anywhere around. Like the way we test for it basically is that we create a kind of approximation convex hull for the main reactor blocks, and then test the distance to ensure that performance is always there. So we don't have to check against each block which one is the closest, because that would be crazy in terms of computation. So basically, bigger reactor is still small, but you need stabilizers that are quite a distance away from it. So you have a lot of space in between, which you can fill up with whatever you like, with decorative blocks, with hulls, with armor, with weapons, or whatever you like. And of course, we wanted to do a step more, so we're introducing now also a reactor chambers, which is kind of an add-on which can actually make your ship into something very unique and very special for each ship. You can pretty much give your ship a character with these chambers now, and we get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, so it's kind of like outfitting your ship with different equipment, if you will. So it's just a much better way to customize stuff, especially on the fly. If you have a different setup, like if you have a ship that you want to be able to be good in combat, but then you don't want to necessarily tweak it to be really good at traveling all the time, then you can actually set it up so you can have those different chamber setups for different reactors, and then you can actually toggle between them.
Yeah, you can have multiple reactors in your ship. There can only be one active reactor. You can switch between reactors pretty much instantly, but there is a cooldown to switch again after that. Also, your chambers will need some time to boot up, so switching mid-battle is probably not a good idea, since you pretty much render all your chambers a little bit useless for an amount of time until they are fully booted up. So something that is, however, good if you're like traveling, you have your reactor that is made for fast movement and jump drive, and then you kind of like see a base that you want to attack, or you want to attack in general, you want to engage, then you switch to your reactor to something more more made for battle. However, reactor blocks, of course, are very expensive, so you have to think about like how many you would want to put on your ship. Stabilizers can be reused, so if you have multiple reactors, you don't have to necessarily build stabilizers for each of them. You can use the same stabilizers as long as they are sufficiently far away from the reactors. So yeah, this is what they just built, was like, this is a simple 2-reactor setup, this just works fine.
Yep, so I just kind of wanted to cover the very basics for anybody who just wants to get a really condensed version. So I think at this point we can kind of start jumping into more specific examples if you want, and also delving into the reactor menu. Before I go too much farther with it, I do want to go ahead and say that everything is still very in flux, very heavily in development. So textures are one thing. You guys obviously noticed the shards over here. That's just sort of a way for us to represent what level a chamber is at, because we have a whole tree system for them. We'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, so it's still very much in progress, and we have some other stuff flying around back there. But there's going to be a lot of like balance changes and stuff like that. This isn't something that's going to be perfect in a day, and it's going to be actually, we'll be able to benefit a lot from your guys' feedback too. So we're really excited to actually get it out to you guys to help test, but we just wanted to give you a really condensed version there at the beginning, so if anybody wants to sort of get a gist of that and then check stuff out later, we'll have highlights and things. But just to give you guys a brief synopsis, that's generally what it was. So with that said, I think we can go ahead and jump in with our radio menu and show you guys a little bit of the reactor menu right here, the window. So right now we have 2 reactors, which you can't see the total number at this point, I don't think, but we can actually see that we can switch between the 2, and then I could activate that one. So that doesn't seem to have a whole lot of purpose right now because I don't have any chambers on it. But you can actually go through and also, I guess we might as well just go through each one of these tabs. So the tree will show you the chamber trees. I can have a lot of different chambers attached to the reactor. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But then we also have a priority menu, which is actually how you can set up how you want things to be fed basically first. I mean, it's a priority list basically. So if you want to make sure that you always have thrusters, then that can be at the top of your priority list. And then if you want cannons instead, you can do that, and then you can click and drag and move stuff around, and it's really easy to do.
Okay. I think we should go a little bit into that because this is a very very useful new system. It also showcases another change in the power system, which affects pretty much every system that before had a one-time usage, kind of like, for example, weapons. When you fire weapons in the old system, your power would be instantly deducted from your power pool, and you would lose the power. And if you didn't have enough power, you couldn't fire that weapon. So we changed that now. The power of weapons are now not consumed on firing, but are consumed when reloading. So you basically have to charge up your weapons. Each of those kind of systems, main example being weapons, now have 2 rates at which they consume power. One rate is basically like a top-off rate, kind of like if you plug in your mobile phone. When it's at 100%, it doesn't use as much power as when it's charging from the outlet. So when there will be a power consumption of your weapons now, even though you're not using them, but it's very low. However, if you're firing them, the power consumption will be, depending on the size of your weapon, of course, higher. This means that you can pretty much always fire any weapons, no matter how big they are, but reloading will take a ton of time, depending on your power. That also means that with the priority queue, you can have different systems that are prioritized. So if you want to make sure that you always have thrust and don't care about the time you reload your weapons, then put your thrust on top of the priority list, and you will always get power first for the thrust. This is basically the order in which power is consumed in that list. Meaning that first the power goes to the thrusters, and then we care about cannons, then we care about shields, then we care about jump drive. So if you care about, like for example, shields should be pretty far up in a combat situation. Meaning that if you have like a doomsday weapon and you don't care about your doomsday weapon to like reload at all, you can just put it on the bottom and everything else gets power before that doomsday weapon even begins to get power. It might not get power at all if you aren't power stable in that way. But you can make some pretty interesting ships with that have like weapons that aren't meant to be fired twice. One item of that list is also docks. And docks basically means that once it reaches that item in the list, it will consume the power on all of your docks, and there's also a separate one for turrets. So for example, if you have a ship that doesn't have any weapons, you can put your turrets pretty far up, and so basically your turrets get power before your thrusters, if you want to, or your cannons. So you can pretty much modify that too for your own ship.
Yeah, so it allows for a lot more customization of your whole build, really. I mean, down to exactly what things get powered first. So it's going to be really nice for being able to customize your stuff to exactly how you want it to operate. So I'm going to go ahead and add down some conduits. So you're going to have, again, we come down to our basic parts. We have the reactor, then we have the stabilizers, and then if you want to start adding chambers, then on top of that, you can start adding different chambers after you add a conduit to connect them. So let's go ahead and undo the symmetry that we have. And so let's say for our right reactor, I wanted to do a mobility chamber, for example. So we go ahead and add that, and then I'm going to go into the reactor window here, and now you can see there is actually a mobility chamber here. So right now there's currently no tree in game, but this is a very in-progress build. We will end up having something so you can actually see exactly what branches go where and what things get what, because some things have dependencies on others. So we're going to go ahead and just crank out our top speed right now.
Yeah. To clarify really quick, the thing you need conduits for are only for chambers. You don't need to connect your stabilizers with conduits. You only need to connect chambers with conduits, which basically you're building the tree yourself on your ship. Is the idea.
And actually, I'm going to go back and revert this back to just a basic mobility chamber, because I just want to show you guys the default server speed that we have is 225, right there, 225 meters a second. So just to give you guys a good example, let's go ahead and go into our reactor setup, and then I'm going to change that back to top speed, and then upgrade it to its max, which is right now top speed 3, and then let's see how fast we actually go. So there's 225 already, and 450 meters a second, just with one chamber, and this is a very small build, so it doesn't take many blocks. But with just one block, you can basically double your speed. It's pretty awesome. Yeah. I love it.
Vroom.
And keep in mind that like the chamber blocks are pretty expensive, so you need to be careful where to place them. Also, for the levels, you don't need more blocks for each level, but there is a thing formerly known as tech points. We renamed that into chamber capacity, which makes a lot more sense.
It does.
Basically, your chamber has just a capacity, which is 100%, and each chamber consumes some capacity. So the higher your level, the more capacity your chamber is going to use for that. That's currently not reflected in the actual levels, but you can already see it. It uses 10%. So you can only have like that many nodes of your tree in your ship. But of course, you can have multiple reactors on your ship, even though only one can be active. So you can be a little bit more creative with like different configurations on your own ship and switch around.
Yeah, so it shows everything that you need to know about your reactor up here at the top as well. So right now, this is a level 0 chamber, or reactor, sorry, not chamber, because it's 0 to 10 blocks. And so if I were to increase that to like 11 blocks, it would become level 1. And so that way you can actually see how many blocks you're going to need for it, for the chamber size. It'll give you a required thing here. And
so
then
if you have a reactor that is very big, you need a lot of chambers. You need a lot of chamber blocks for each chamber.
Yep.
As it just doesn't work. It will tell you. Also, if you're this system is pretty much made to be consistent. So if once you have built a tree and you take damage in battle, your tree will not be destroyed. So if one conduit gets shot out, that doesn't mean that your tree suddenly stops working altogether. You will lose HP, of course, since reactors will be the main source of HP coming. However, like if you you won't lose like the reactor effects that you put on your ships until you like reboot your ship into a new configuration, or you repair it and then reboot it, and then it will be the same as you had it. So it will remember how many blocks there were on your ship when you when you build it initially. So you don't have to worry about like making it so that like one block isn't the weak point. However, you still should at all times armor up your reactor. Also think about like having backup reactors. To if your main reactor gets shot out, you can switch to a backup reactor to save some HP. Of course, redundancy helps you with your robustness. However, of course, that's extra space and money you put into your ship.
So something else that I also want to cover just really quickly is that I do have a couple of FTL chambers on here, but I'm going to go ahead and remove those just to show you guys that we actually have now built into the core itself a very small, weak jump drive and scanner built in automatically. So we don't have to like add scan blocks, we don't have to do like huge amounts of jump drive blocks, jump modules, all that kind of stuff. It's all built in right with the chambers and into the core itself in a very weak state. So I'm going to come out of there, and then I'll show you guys what we can do with some of the FTL chambers to affect a system that's already inside of the ship. So if I were to use that, which would probably take a little while to charge, we would jump, I think the current default, which could change, the current default is 4 sectors, I believe. And then if we upgraded that all the way, it would go up to, oh, what was it, like 16 sectors? Something crazy?
Yeah, so basically we're removing the jump drives as a block. And of course, we have to compensate for people having multiple jump drives. So what we're adding is that you can make your jump drive, your built-in jump drive, super strong. You I think even at the moment it goes even up to 32 sectors. That might change though. But also there will be chambers where you can add multiple charges to your built-in jump drive, so you can jump more than one time in a row. And that's kind of how we compensate for people having multiple jump drives. That also gives us more control over the whole thing, so it's not abused to no end. One thing I still want to clarify for like docking. If you dock with a reactor, your reactor will currently deactivate, meaning that it will always draw power from the main ship. Of course, that is an issue with self-powering turrets. But we made the system in such a way so that you kind of don't need self-powering turrets anymore, since we try to like play around with all kind of like power sharing up the tree, but we always ended up with it being very exploitable. In that, for example, you could wait, no, actually I think we remained on being able to have self-powering turrets after all, but they can't have any tree. I think that's what we ended up with. Yeah. So what the power system will do, it will look down the tree onto the next active power reactor. So if you have a own power reactor, you can use that if you want to, or if you deactivate it, it will look down the chain to the next one that is active. Up to the mothership, but it will only use the effects of the mothership. You cannot use any tree that is further up the tree, so you can't give your turret a individual chamber tree.
So I saw some comments going by about jump drives, how we currently have them, and then some of the other related things like jump inhibitors. Do we want to talk about some of our plans for chamber trees and effects that they could have based on what you add in the chamber system?
Yeah. One more thing for the jump drive, there's also auto charge, which is very nice. So you can enable that, and then you don't have to hold down the button anymore. And for other effects, the power tree also is the chamber tree is also effective for stations. So there will be a lot of like chambers that are station only. You could still place it on your ship, I guess, but it wouldn't do anything. One nice thing that we will add, for example, is that you can also increase the distance for your mart gates, the minimum distance. And one extra thing you get at the end of that tree would be free target warp gates, which means you can set the target to anything, which doesn't have to be a warp gate. So you can basically warp anywhere within your reach with a warp gate. Of course, this is up for balancing, and that's kind of part of the universe update that's coming after that. So it's not like you can like jump into enemy sector, then fire missiles, and then just vanish again. So there will be a whole new sub game with like jump inhibitors and warp gates and jump drives. But we wanted to make the warp gates a little bit more exciting and give them still, like with more powered up jump drives, we give them still a reason to be there. And I think like a free target for warp gates is a nice thing to do that.
So if you really want to get around the galaxy fast, you can actually use actually this kind of a setup right here, where you have one where your top speed is maxed out, and then you can use that for a little while. And then keep in mind there's going to be a little bit of a downtime while you reboot to a different reactor, but you could then switch to an FTL, and while you're going like 450 meters a second, you could then go ahead and use like your max jump distance too, so it can make traveling a lot faster.
Yeah, and our initial approach for this kind of prototype was to get in the chambers that we want to get in like 100%. And there are a lot of chambers that are currently in our like experimentation phase, where we kind of talk about what cool effects we want for ships. We have a lot of cool ideas for that one. If you want, you can come up with like ideas for yourself if you have some.
All right, let's see what else. I guess we could probably show off Cloak now. I guess people are probably excited about that, right? Because Cloak builds, for anybody who doesn't know, used to be kind of a nightmare to build because they had to be what, like 99% reactor blocks, I think, and that's not the case anymore. So I'm going to actually just to sort of keep this example going and show you guys how easy it is to build these reactor setups, I'm going to go ahead and remove everything that we currently have. And
yeah, always keep in mind that like in a new universe, you will not have access to everything at once, likely, unless you have a lot of money or a lot of influence, or you come around a lot and mine a lot different places. So what Saber shows here is very easy if you have the blocks. But like we also use these chamber blocks to diversify resources a little bit. So those would be the ultra rare resources. Since you can still, like with just a main reactor and stabilizers, you can still fully use your ship. You don't have to have chambers necessarily, but of course they are very nice to have. Think about it like kind of like a real skill tree. I mean, this is a real skill tree, but a skill tree in a fixed skill tree in another game where you level up, like an RPG where you level up and you get different like abilities. And that's kind of what this kind of system should represent, also in terms of when you get it in terms of gameplay. So you will have to, the longer you play, the more chamber blocks and the more different chamber blocks you will acquire. And from there you can pretty much like build them out, and also the amount of chamber blocks will of course increase as you go.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, we'll have the tree shown in game. Right now I just happen to know this stuff because I've been working with it a bunch lately. And so you can actually, you'll be able to see where you need to go to get certain things, like for example the cloaker or the jammer, which I'm going to add on here as well as a little aside sort of a thing, so branch off of this main chamber. So, and it actually shows in the overlay too, so if you look down at the bottom of above my health bar, we see that I have stealth strength 6, and then above up here we have cloaker. So I can go ahead and add another one over here, which is going to be our jammer. And this is all branching off of this original stealth strength chamber. So then there's a jammer. So it's that easy. And I can go ahead and add on a little bit of extra stuff. So we'll add another stealth chamber over here. And then now we can see that right here reflected from what we have on our build. And we'll increase the usage time here a little bit. So we'll give it 2, let's go 3. But you could actually, well, I don't think we have it working right now, but eventually, if you tier up enough in it, you'll have usage time permanent. So you can actually have a permanent cloaker. But it's going to be very expensive for your chamber capacity. Yeah,
so basically if you go permanent, you pretty much cannot do anything else with your chamber tree. In terms of like costs.
So then you see now I have a stealth drive in my hotbar, which is basically just our cloaker. And I'm going to go ahead and charge that and then use it.
Yeah, the chamber trees in size, like the chambers in size, are dependent on how big your reactor is. So if you have a very small reactor, a very small chamber is sufficient. But if you have a bigger reactor, you need bigger chambers.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we have the larger ship here next to us, just to show you guys like how it looks scaled up, because what I'm trying to show is just sort of the bare minimum of, hey, these are just individual chamber blocks. This is how the system works. But yeah, you can scale it up, you can move it around your ship however much you want. It doesn't have to be like a one block conduit. It can be basically made to fit any build pretty much. And I think actually Landcake, I think, was up here working on one of our smallest official builds, which is the B110, because that was one thing that I was really worried about with this system to make sure that we got it balanced right, was so you could still have ships that are this size or potentially even a little bit smaller. I guess, did we mention at the beginning that you don't actually have to have stabilizers for a very small reactor? Like if it's just a couple blocks, you don't actually need them. So you can still keep really, really small builds and they'll still work out all right.
So the core plus power block plus thruster is still a thing.
Yep. It's just that now it's a reactor instead of what we previously had. Alright, so my cloaker's charged, so I'm going to go ahead and right-click it and jump out so you guys can see that my ship is invisible. And it's not made entirely of power blocks. So there you go, we now have cloaking ships that actually will work.
Yeah, and of course, since that now seems a little bit overpowered, of course, we have a whole system now to counter cloaking. It is basically a new information warfare system, and there will be more coming for the universe update, a lot more coming for the universe update. But this is now a basic system. Basically, you have two values of strength. There is your stealth and your recon, and basically these two powers are values on your ship that you can increase with either the stealth chambers or your recon chambers. And when you use your scanners, you increase that value either time-based or permanently, depending on your chambers. And depending on how the balance is between you and a ship that is, for example, cloaked, you can see that cloaked ship. But if that ship you see is very weak in terms of stealth, you can even see more than that. You can see their chambers, you can see their weapon systems, and you know exactly where to shoot them. So even having a little bit of stealth strength without even having like cloaking and jamming is kind of useful to like counter you being scanned. Also, someone scanning you does not uncloak you for everybody. The one scanning you is able to see you, but nobody else that is currently not scanning and doesn't have the strength to scan you will be able to see you. So it's a very selective system now. So having one small ship that can scan you in a whole fleet is kind of useful, but not as useful as it would be if it just straight up would uncloak you for everybody. But that small ship could see you and tell the others where you are, I guess.
Alright, so I'm going to preface this because we were having some issues just before the stream started. This has been working okay for some of the other players, but it's just been for my client. It seems that the scanner isn't quite working right. But you'll see if you just watch very carefully, when I activate my scanner, you should see a highlight as if I were to select a ship like this. You should see one of those pop up around some of the systems in the ship ahead of us. So just keep an eye out for it, because I'm going to click it in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so there was a little quick flash there, and I do want to preface that this is still in progress, but that will be a much longer lasting thing for the actual build once that gets out.
Yeah, I will post a screenshot how it looks for me, because it works for me actually.
Yeah.
In chat,
that would be
where
great.
You can see that the reactors are highlighted because we are scanning the other ships with a 6 strength of recon.
So you can actually see right here, if you zoom in a little bit, right there you can see the systems that are highlighted. And then that's about what it looks like. So mine, it's just flashing briefly, but it will actually be more persistent once we actually get that in and working better.
Yeah, and this was kind of the reason why we did the outline system to begin with. Also for like usability, when you build reactors, you will get outlines of your own reactors and chambers, and it will display what those chambers are, so you get an overview by just looking at your ship at what each chamber is. Also, like if for building, you cannot, like, these chambers when you specify them into like from a jump chamber to a jump distance. If you take that block, which is now a specific chamber block, it will turn back into a original, into a general jump type chamber block. Also, if you place more blocks onto a reactor that's currently not in, but it will be, you can basically just make your reactor, your chamber bigger. So if you kind of like make your reactor a little bit bigger and you see, oh, okay, now I need more chamber blocks, then you can just get your general blocks and just put them next to the chambers and they will automatically turn into the same chamber. This whole effect system, we built that from the ground up. It's pretty powerful in that it's not only made for reactors actually, it's made for pretty much applying anything. So for example, we can apply effects to a sector. Which means every ship in that sector would then get the effect. We can also go higher and apply an effect to even systems or even like bigger stuff than that, which will come in the universe. And that way we can have a lot of different gameplay elements that we otherwise would have to painstakingly do manually. For example, like imagine you are in a nebula and that nebula has some kind of weird charge to it, and you suddenly your thrusters are halved. You only get like half the max speed in there, or your powers doesn't work as well, or you can't jump further. I mean, everything is pretty much possible with this system. We can show the effect editor we have now. Like this, all of this is of course fully moddable, and we even have like in-game GUIs for it, where you can change it pretty much in-game on the fly, where you can pretty much just click together effects as you like, and then apply them to either chambers or to sectors or to ships directly. If you're an admin and you want to do something really weird, then you can like make a ship and just apply random effects to it if you like. But yeah, that is probably one of the things that took the longest for the implementation. I mean, the longest took the actual planning of the system, but this effect system, which will also be used in the universe update and for the coming weapon system upgrade, is made for that.
So obviously this is in a semi-working state now. We do need to, after we get done with the stream, we'll still be doing some more balancing and stuff, but do we have, I see some people asking, do we have a set date yet that we want to have this out to the public in a dev build format? Not necessarily a released format, but in a dev build format for people to jump in and play around with and help test and balance.
Pretty much as fast as possible. Okay. I can't say if a fixed date. The main work right now is pretty much filling in the effects on the chambers. All the systems are pretty much done, and of course a lot of like polishing and GUI work and texture work, but that of course can wait a little bit, since we can already do a dev build without that fully. But it should be very I want to release something that is more, say, robust, since this system is very important in general. We also, like, the old system is still in there, meaning that you only get the new power system if you actually place a reactor block currently on your ship. Other than that, you can still use the old ships just as they are.
I believe, though, that we are changing the amount of power that certain things like cannons and stuff require, though, right? So that way you won't need as many blocks for them.
Yeah, but those are different values, actually. They have like a charging at a top of value, while the old system uses like a one-time consumption, which is a different value.
Right.
So the old values, I think, will still persist. So you don't need to like if you use it on an old world of yours, all your ship will still be fully functional.
But that's only going to be temporary until we actually get the full system implemented.
Yeah, there will be an option to like turn off the old system completely for a new world. Or you can also what we will probably do is like just phase them out by not being able to craft them and to buy them anymore. And I think with the new systems, like a lot of people will also just prefer the chambers since they can do a lot of cool things and you get a lot of more space in your ship.
Yeah, there's so much more you can do. Yeah, I do want to mention that we have a rather lengthy list of chamber ideas internally. We obviously talked with the community some as well, and actually added some of those into that list as well. But there's a lot of things that we could potentially add, which are going to be a little out there. The nice part is we can actually add those as the system is in, so it's going to be fairly easy to build on top of stuff later on.
Yeah, and we go through each approach or each idea individually. For example, we had an idea which then we deemed kind of not worthy of chambers. I don't mean worthy, but like it does something so different from what chambers would do, since it doesn't directly affect your ship. So we actually put that at its own block. I'm not sure if you want to show that off. So yeah, this is basically a block that lets you hover and keeps the distance off the ground, and it's purely based on physics. So there's no like fancy tricks to make this stable. So you have to kind of like make it stable on your own. And as you can see, Landcake's ship can be drifting to the left there because he removed that one side of the repulse blocks. So it's not very stable. I mean, it is stable, but it's drifting.
Yeah.
You can make a lot of cool things with this, depending how you build it. Like you can make something that is in multiple directions, so it kind of can go through tunnels because it goes like in all 6 directions. So it's stable in the middle of a tunnel, for example, which I'm looking forward to seeing. Yeah, you can make very cool things. We currently restrict the amount of repulse blocks you can lose a little bit, since it is not that trivial to compute, actually. But it's a lot better than just like take a distance from the ground and then just magically put us there. It's a lot more fun to actually work with actual physics in this one. Thanks for Landcake to actually making this a lot more stable, because my original version was just flipping and going all over.
Yeah, I tested this the other day, like maybe 2 days ago, and that's why I was so hesitant to bring it up, because like it was going all over the place. It was crazy. Yeah, see, it actually like goes off the top of the ship too. So we could actually take it and load it up on a station somewhere as well, and kind of show that. There you go. See right there. So
oh yeah,
it's sliding off at an angle.
Just to give another like nice surprise. Chambers on stations will also be able to create gravity. Not only directional gravity like planets have, but also maybe even spherical gravity, or central gravity rather.
So that's one part of why we've been so excited about being able to reveal this to you guys, is because it's not just limited to ships anymore. It's going to be so many things that we can do with it, including little hover tanks and all sorts of stuff.
Kind of funny, like the tanks hovering kind of looks like a pre-made like animation, it going up and down, but it actually is not.
Nope.
It's actually doing it.
Yep. Yeah, nobody's in that red one over there. And then I'm not like using any vertical thrust or anything. It's just kind of bouncing around on its own as we're slamming into each other.
Yeah, and if you like want to go up a mountain, you can just like aim up a little bit and then pretty much fly up the mountain, since you get repulsed from the side of the mountain as well.
Yep. Again, not holding ascend or anything. This is all, I'm just using forward and looking around. So this is all working in, it's not just like a hover off the ground thing, it's a repulse from everything